Ever since I started doing research on learning, and in the 90s did my doctoral research on inquisitivism and the what does this button do approach to learning, which has now morphed into or evolved into the learner's mindset, I've been puzzled and challenged by the fact that some people really have a hard time learning how to learn, moving into the higher order thinking skills required in the learner's mindset, and just have difficulty taking ownership of their learning. This question about why can it be so difficult for people to take ownership of the learning has not gone away. And with every new intake of students in the graduate program that I teach in, or some of the students I work in a professional setting or in a consulting setting, I'm often puzzled by why is it that it's so difficult to take ownership of your own learning and to become more of an autodidactic learner. Now, this question can be answered directly from the literature and from the research. And the fact is that our educational system is based on behaviorist principles. We do have a lot of operant and classical conditioning. Students are asked to regurgitate information. They are given content. They're asked to look at that content and give it back to the instructor, whether in the form of a test, an assignment, or even a project. So we have a system of education that reinforces the information transfer model. So that, I think, is one of the challenges that we are facing. But there are other challenges that I think we can address. The behaviorist model of education, the information transfer model of education, which is the dominant model that we're using today and have used for over a century, has with it some consequences. Because it's easy for students how to learn how to give the information back, students can very quickly learn what it takes to memorize key information, recognize patterns, identify questions that could be asked, and then give the instructor what they want. So there's a tendency for quick fix methodologies to be implemented in education to help students be able to retrieve information more rapidly, to be able to give it back, to summarize, to organize. And so we have a tendency, because of the system of education, which is based on the behaviorist notion of a change over time or a change in behavior. And the easiest way to see a change in behavior is to see whether or not a student can give you something back. Information, regurgitate the information, share something, recreate something. So this model, which dominates our system of education, does lead to challenges like the quick fix. There's quick ways to study. There's the top 10, the top 5, the top 3 ways of ensuring that you're able to remember things more effectively and to memorize and so on and so forth. Another reason that I think the behaviorist model has continued to be used is that human beings are the most amazing learning entities on the planet. And we have a tendency to be able to learn in unique ways regardless of the system of education that we're in. John Hattie's work on visible learning has shown that just as long as you're not physically abusing a student or psychologically abusing a student or doing something to get in their way, they are going to learn regardless of what we're doing to them. Now, Hattie has also been able to demonstrate conclusively that what we do can have a bigger and better impact. And so we should really focus on those things that are going to help our learners to learn. So again, our nature as a human learner, as a human learning entity, is a factor that comes into play. Another factor that I have observed, and this is a bit more anecdotal and it's more of my conclusion, is that the Pareto principle would apply here in this sense, that 80-20 rule. If people can get by putting in a 20% effort to get that 80% grade, well then why bother doing the rest, right? So if our system of education can get students 80% of the way there, and having them do that more is not necessarily warranted, especially from an instructor's perspective. If we can get our students, most of them passing the test or doing well enough, and then having the normal distribution hit where you do have some students who are doing even better, well then why do anything different than what we're already doing? A lot of instructors will push back on things like the project approach or project-based learning or e-portfolios or giving learners ownership of the learning through authentic learning opportunities, because we are getting our students to pass the test and the test scores are showing that it's working. So why bother? Why bother? Well, I would argue that it's our responsibility as educators, as stewards of the learning system, it's our responsibility to not just prepare our learners for the test, we really should be focused on preparing them for life. And I would argue that going beyond that 80-20 principle and helping students to go deeper, to learn, to really take ownership of the learning is much more significant, because it's going to prepare them for the challenges of the future, which are getting more and more complex. Once again, the behaviorist model works quite well, especially if you're measuring competencies. If you want to measure a skill, an ability, a competency, the behaviorist model will work relatively well. Ask a student to do something, they demonstrate it, they write about it, they regurgitate it, it's working, easy to measure. From a competency-based perspective, this works quite well. But if you want to move well beyond that into the higher orders of thinking, where you're looking at evaluation, analysis, synthesis, and creation, well then you have to go beyond the simple content or information regurgitation. You have to encourage the student to be able to analyze the situation, evaluate what's going on, and then create something new from that, or develop something new, or synthesize something new. If we really want to look at significant changes and improvements, we have to move into that higher order level of thinking, and you don't get that from the behaviorist and competency-based models. So we need to move students into that type of environment. Unfortunately, we don't do that very well, and that natural basic intrinsic inquisitivism that kids have, children have when they're children, which I now refer to as the learner's mindset, that questioning attitude, that desire to ask those why questions, which is so abundant in our toddlers and our children, and that very quickly goes away as they start moving through the educational system, is something that we want to restore. Or what we want to do is, if you're in early education, you want to maintain that. If you've got these children coming into kindergarten or play school and they're asking all those wonderful, amazing questions, you want to encourage that and help them to keep that questioning attitude, that attitude of exploration, that attitude of looking for answers. That's the wonderful thing that I think we really owe it to our learners to do. As our students get older and they're in in high school or higher education, quite often, as I'm seeing as an educator, students come into my programs, they come into my classrooms with a bit of a fixed attitude. This is how the system works. Dr. H, can you tell me what I need to do for the test? Oh, there is no test? This is different. Well, what do I have to write about in the paper? Oh, there is no paper, there's a project. Well, can you give me a point form as to what I need to include in my project? So the challenge that I am facing as an educator is that a lot of my learners come into my learning environment without having a body of experience where they are asked to actually move beyond that simple information transfer, the simple application of ideas or the application of a process, and moving them into that higher order of evaluation, analysis, synthesis, and creation is something they're just not used to. It's difficult to do. It's also difficult to do because complicit with having students work in a way that they're not used to is the fact that failure is going to be the norm for the first little while students get used to doing that. And part of learning in a real way, part of taking ownership of your learning, working with an authentic project, is that you're going to make mistakes. And actually, the sooner you make mistakes and work through them, the sooner you're going to come to a resolution. But unless you've had many years of experience doing that, it can be quite uncomfortable. And it can really make some people push back on this notion, because this isn't the school, this isn't the learning, this isn't my undergraduate studies, this isn't what we did in high school, this isn't what we did in junior high. So students will push back on that because it's something that they just aren't used to. Failure. Not just once, but repeated failure as you struggle through challenges. The persistence that is necessary to work out those challenges, to work out those mistakes. The time that it takes to work through this process. Again, these are factors that many of our learners aren't accustomed to. Persistence over time, multiple iterations, little small challenges, which are failures, but that can be worked through, are the norm of what you are experiencing in the learner's mindset, but it isn't necessarily the norm of what you have in the behaviorist model. So this level of discomfort in learning, which is what I refer to as learning, that cognitive dissonance, the challenge, the fact that what you've tried here may not necessarily work, so you try from a different perspective. And those multiple iterations, that persistence to work through the challenges, is something that a lot of students don't have to do. So when they're exposed to these ideas in a new learning environment, it can be onerous. It can also be challenging. Now, I've spent a bit of time talking about the challenges that I'm observing with many of my learners, with many of my students. But the reality is, I experience those same challenges myself on a daily basis. On a daily basis. Just over a year ago, I created a video and wrote a bit of a post talking about the higher order thinking skills that I was using to solve a physical problem. I had an issue with my knee and tried many different things, and I can point you to the video in the post. And through some exploration, experimentation, I learned that the problem probably was the fact that I had been wearing orthotics for a long time, and that was preventing my feet from operating normally, which changed the position of my knee function, my gait, my hips, and a variety of other things. Well, we're a year and almost 4 months after that video, and I have been experimenting and exploring how a change in footwear, moving away from traditional footwear to barefoot or natural or zero drop footwear, has an impact on my life. And I've had wonderful success, but it's also been a significant challenge. I've had a lot of failures. I've had to actually make a lot of adjustments as I've gone along. I've had a lot of discomfort as I've gone along, not just discomfort in terms of my cognitive understanding, but in terms of my physical discomfort. It was a very, very physically challenging thing to do, to move from one type of a footwear to a neutral shoe. I had pain in my calves and my feet, and for the first 4 or 5 months, I didn't think I was going to make it. But I did hit a point where I worked through the pain and discomfort, and I had amazing progress with my knee, and did some significant work on improving my knee. And with the natural shoes, the flat shoes, the barefoot shoes that I've been using, and working out barefoot, I've managed to really work through a whole host of things. But it took a lot of work. It took a lot of time. And here I am, a year and several months into the process, and it worked. I worked through a lot of things. I worked with my doctor, I worked with my physiotherapist, I worked with my chiropractor. I spent a ton of time in the literature, spent a lot of time reading a variety of different books. I really got to the point where I understand the situation, and I worked through it. But it took a lot of time. And now here I am, over a year and several months later, and things are working well, or are they? Well, I'm finding myself at a point where now that I've solved the problem with my feet, with my knee, I've exposed I have some issues with my hip flexors. Not only do I have a problem with my hip flexors because of my footwear, when I was a young man in the military doing certain things, I had an accident where I had injured my pelvis and my hip, and a few surgeries later. So I've got some physical issues I'm dealing with that a change in footwear has exposed. And a lot of these issues that I'm dealing with are issues of mobility. And mobility is a little bit more than flexibility. Mobility is being able to move through different positions, and in order to move through certain positions, you have to have flexibility. So I'm learning that I need to work on my flexibility and my mobility. And some of the best ways to work on my flexibility is through strength building mobility movements. And this is where I'm running into another challenge. I spent a year and several months sorting out my issue with my knee and my feet, and now that I'm working on other issues, part of me is going, oh no, I've got to spend another year struggling through this. Isn't there an easy answer? I'm looking for somebody. I'm looking for a book. I'm looking for a methodology. I'm looking for an approach. I've been exploring the notion of mobility all over the internet. I've looked at so many different gurus and experts, and I've looked at a variety of different books. I've looked at the literature. Guess what? I'm going to have to apply the same approach that I did to solving the situation with my feet and my knee to my mobility issue. I'm reading the books, I'm looking at the videos, I'm following some of the experts, and I'm piecing together bits and pieces of a mobility routine that I can fit into my strength training routine so that I'm very, very efficient. So instead of adding more on top, I'm trying to become efficient because there's only so many hours in a day. And I'm not a professional athlete, so I can't train for 2 to 3 hours a day. I'm trying to find an approach where I can spend 45 to 60 minutes a day working on strength, flexibility, and mobility, and get the level of health and mobility that is going to make a difference in my life. And there is no fixed approach. There is no simple solution. I've looked at a variety of different gurus, and I'm finding out, just like I did with my feet and my knee, I have to pick and choose the right components. I have to move into a position of evaluation. Evaluation of myself, evaluation of my condition, evaluation of my situation. Sure, I'm working with experts, I'm working with doctors, I'm working with different professionals, physiotherapists, chiropractors. I'm working with some key people, and they are acting as coaches to point me in a certain direction, but ultimately I have to spend the time looking at the literature, looking at the books, looking at the videos, and piecing together routines and activities that I can do in a short period of time to get the biggest bang for my buck, so to speak. Once again, I'm in that learner's mindset. I live it. I'm experiencing it. I'm evaluating a variety of different things. I'm analyzing so many different things. And from that evaluation and analysis, I'm starting to synthesize movements, activities, strategies, routines. And as I create my new routines, I'm getting more and more movement. At the end of this year, one of my goals is to do a pistol squat. Or at minimum, there's the activity where you stand on one foot and you pick up a sock, put that sock on with a standing on one foot, put your shoe on, put that foot down, you stand on the other foot that you just put the shoe on, you pick up a sock, you put the sock on, you put the shoe on, tie it up, you stand down. That is a basic fundamental movement that I'm working towards. And I'm going to spend a year getting to that point. And it's taking a lot of work. I want the quick fix. I want somebody to come along, give me that one book that I can just follow. Give me those 5 steps. Please just give me those 5 steps that I need to follow to be able to solve my problem. Unfortunately, it's just not there. I can cobble together bits and pieces. I can follow some wonderful coaches. I am getting guidance and direction from coaches, but ultimately, I'm the one who knows how my body feels. I'm the one who knows how far I need to move in terms of strength and mobility. I'm the one who has to make the decision of dropping a particular weight, going down to a lighter weight, and ensuring that my form is specific and stringent. I'm the one who has to set up the recording so I can observe myself and ensure that I've got the proper alignment in my hips and my back and in my knee so that I'm doing the form in a way that I'm going to get the maximum results. I have to put in the work. And as I've been doing that, I've been failing. It hasn't always worked. But as I work through this, as I fail forward, as I keep on struggling, as I keep on reviewing, as I keep on experimenting, I am making progress. Iterations over time. Iterations over time. But I'm just like everyone else. I want somebody to come along, make it simple, give me a recipe, I'll do what I'm told, and then I'll get my results. I'll be able to put on the shoe, I'll be able to do the pistol squat I want to do. I'll be able to do those things by simply following this recipe. But that isn't the way things work. I wish it was, but it isn't the way things work. The learner's mindset is not just a mindset, it is an approach to living. Working through the challenges, whether it's a physical challenge like I'm dealing with my hip and a variety of other mobility issues, whether it is a challenge that we're experiencing in terms of doing work in the workplace as a business person, or as a student, we're working through and we're learning, we're struggling through some of the projects that we have. If you're one of the students in any of my courses, you're working on an authentic project. I'm having you do real work. You have to struggle through it. You have to learn from your mistakes. You have to become a continual learner. You have to continually evaluate, analyze, experiment, explore, synthesize, and create, and do it over and over and over again as you move your ideas forward. I wish there was a quick fix. I wish there was a silver bullet. But the reality is, there isn't. As I mentioned, I'm just like most other people. I want a quick fix. I want an easier way. I recently listened to a podcast where the author mentioned that he went through 650 self-development or personal development books so that I wouldn't have to. And he condensed all these wonderful ideas from these self-help books into 7 key points. Wow, that was wonderful. I listened to it. I'm always looking for the quick fix. And when I listened to this individual, I was actually shocked with what his response was, because the first couple of points were essentially, well, you've got to learn to be persistent and struggle through and explore and experiment and get used to the notion that it isn't going to be spelled out for you. Once you can get used to this idea that you've got to, struggle through it and fail through these ideas, well, then you can move on to the next steps. This individual was essentially talking about the learner's mindset. By changing the way that you think about learning, learning is not following a recipe. Learning is not regurgitating information. Learning isn't the things that we often think of. Those might be study skills. Those might be things we do in school. And with the learner's mindset, you change your approach to learning, where you start to adapt those higher order thinking skills, the experimentation, the exploration, the analysis, the synthesis, the creation, all those wonderful things that are different. You take ownership of the learning. You explore, you experiment, continually iterating over time. And then you also factor in your whole learning environment. That is people around you, that includes the experts that you might need to consult, that is friends, family, your physical space. There's so many factors that come into play with the learning environment. So you want to ensure that you are in a learning environment where you can maximize those higher order thinking skills and make those improvements. So whether you are working on school, whether you're working on a business, an entrepreneurial activity, whether you are working on a physical situation like I am, I'm working on fixing my hip. And as I'm doing that, I'm starting to realize I'm going to be able to do so many other things. I'm also realizing, in 6 months, I'm going to probably add 3 or 4 more items that I want to do by the end of the year. But that's a good thing. Because with the learner's mindset, living in that state of seeing challenges as opportunities for growth, I know that I will have the capacity to continually iterate, to continually to fail forward. And so can you. Working through the challenges of life is easier if you adopt the learner's mindset. Change the way you think about learning. Change your approach to learning. And then envelop and incorporate yourself into your learning environment and use the learning environment and shape the learning environment to help you be successful. So whether you are an educator creating this for your learners or you are a learner yourself, there are so many things that can be done. But I also have to be honest. Repetition over time, iterations over time, failing forward, there are several factors here. Time and persistence. Time and persistence. But the effort is worth it.